Good evening, everyone. Can I please get a motion and a second to reconvene the public meeting?
Motion.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence in honor of our servicemen and women? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I have the district clerk please call the roll?
Mrs. Iannatelli. Mrs. DiLorenzo.
Present.
Mrs. Napolitano-Perno. Dr. Centimore.
Present.
Mrs. Mallon.
Present.
Mr. Murphy. Mr. Kulihifar.
I am here as well.
Mrs. Poppy.
Present.
Mr. Hauser.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I please get a motion and a second to approve the instructional personnel item?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Can I please get a motion and a second to suspend the business meeting and reconvene the public hearing of the annual meeting?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Dr. Centimore?
Thank you, Ms. Mallon. So before I take the presentation baton and pass it over to my esteemed colleagues on the cabinet, starting with Mr. Hauser, just a quick recap. This, as we've been discussing for several months now, this has really been a difficult budget process, not something that was unique to Connecticut or even Long Island. It was really across New York State, with the number one challenge being a key aid category, which Mr. Hauser will go into a little bit of a conversation about, a key aid category called foundation aid. So even though we did get some additional expense-based reimbursable type aid, we didn't get that foundation aid increase from this year to next year, which created a difficult situation for us in terms of having a balanced budget. We did take advantage of a lot of attrition, and there'll be a slide on that. Attrition being when positions are vacated, could be retirements, for example. So we certainly took advantage of a dozen positions of attrition, but without that increase in foundation aid, it just wasn't enough, and it did lead to some reduction of staffing known as excessing. And we'll continue that discussion later on. And as superintendent of schools, I obviously own that. The staff members are part of our Connecticut family. And what a bit frustrating as a superintendent of schools is when you look at the fiscal situation in New York State and you realize that there's not a fiscal crisis in New York State, and that school districts across New York State, such as and including Connecticut, should have received some sort of a foundation aid increase. Again, our advocacy was for a moderate increase of about 3%, and we certainly appreciate the advocacy of this board, of our elected officials in the state Senate and Assembly, Superintendent's Association. I know all of our various units, they lobbied, but we got to make sure that we continue with this advocacy lobbying effort because, the governor is pushing for changes in the formula. And districts like Connecticut, we need to see those foundation aid increases. And it's highly unlikely that any changes in the formula are going to benefit districts such as Connecticut. And it's just important. So, there's still a lot of work yet to do. I know everyone up here is up to that task. I know our elected officials are up to that task. And this is truly a bipartisan effort. The governor did one thing successful. She united a lot of people. The northern part of the state, the southern tip, which is the island, rural areas, suburban areas, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, everyone was lobbying to try to get fair foundation aid and adequate increases for next year. Didn't happen, and we have a lot of work to do. We also have to keep an eye on unfunded mandates. There's one big one that is kind of that object in the rearview mirror that will get bigger and bigger, and that's on electric buses. It's while it's a couple of years away, those years come quickly. And if this happens simultaneously with a change in foundation aid, that will hurt districts like Connecticut, and then you have to talk about millions and millions of dollars towards purchasing electric buses and changing infrastructure. That is a superstorm. And so there's a lot of advocacy that we still need to do. And, you often hear this term used in athletics, that there's truly no off season. But when it comes to advocacy, especially at things of this nature and the funding of public education, especially Connecticut, there truly is no off season. So, I appreciate the efforts of everyone involved with adopting the budget and presenting the budget tonight for the hearing and for the community's consideration next week. So now I'll take the baton and I'll pass it over to Mr. Hauser.
Thank you, Dr. Centimore. Just a few things to let everyone aware of. In the back of the room on the chairs, there's a copy of the budget newsletter that was mailed to each household in the Connecticut community. So if anyone needs a copy, this back there. And also, there are copies of tonight's presentation back on one of the two chairs as well.
And certainly, Mr. Hauser, if anyone hasn't received it yet, I know sometimes because we have 3 communities that come together, the mailing can be, different. We certainly have available in district office if anybody just wants to send us any kind of a communication, email, or a phone call.
Yep. All right, so as we move through the slides, several members of the cabinet here will contribute to explaining some of the details in the slide. All right, so here's the calendar. That it's pretty much the same calendar that's appeared in all the presentations. Obviously, we started back in January, and then we're all the way down towards the bottom, which is tonight's public hearing. And next Tuesday, May 21st, is the actual budget vote, as well as the school board election. Okay, the next 3 slides, I will ask that Ms. Poppy step up.
I'd like to share this evening some of the curricular initiatives and the programmatic gains that the proposed budget will support. These include Connecticut High School provides students with an opportunity to earn college credits while learning in the high school environment through 5 different universities: St. John's University, Farmingdale State College, LIU, CW Post, Stony Brook University, and Suffolk Community College. Through these partnerships, 30 dual enrollment courses are available to our students, offering up to 106 college credits to students before they graduate high school. The district has spearheaded a personal financial literacy initiative for students to learn how to manage their finances and make financially informed decisions. Connecticut High School students serve as role models for our elementary and middle school age student populations and conduct interactive lessons and workshops on a variety of topics. Connecticut offers comprehensive special education programming for students in grades pre-K through 12. Sensory hallways have been installed in our elementary schools to assist with the needs of our special education students. This school year, Connecticut High School students earned 126 New York State Seals of Biliteracy, and Connecticut earned a district-level 5-year Veteran Seal of Biliteracy honor. Connecticut High School's esports program competes in the High School Esports League fall and spring major seasons. a full-year business and computer science-based esports course launched in 2023-2024. Our ENL student population contributes a rich diversity to our schools. Among the program's highlights are the Community ENL Family Night and our after-school enrichment programs. Connectquot's athletes earn top honors at local, state, and national levels of competition. And Connectquot was named a 2024 Best Community for Music Education by the NAM Foundation. Annually, our renowned Fine and Performing Arts program showcases student talents. In 2023-2024, 147 students were chosen to perform festivals such as Allstate, LISFA, NYSCAME, and SCMEA.
So it's important to emphasize that while we had to make some tough staffing decisions that we'll get into shortly, is that the district's commitment to excellence. Again, I always refer to Connectquot as a AAA school district, academic excellence, athletic excellence, the arts, excellent in all the arts. That commitment to excellence continues in this proposed budget for the community's consideration and continues to build upon all these successes over the years. Thank you.
I'm going to continue now with some suggestions, a continuation really of a conversation that we've been having amongst the Board of Education regarding the Elementary Instructional Interventionist Program. Our final proposal, which would be supported by the 2024-2025 budget, is a model that includes 4 elementary interventionists, who will rotate amongst our 7 elementary schools. With a programmatic focus that includes hands-on work with students in foundational literacy and mathematics-based interventions, which is similar to the work that they're doing now, a continuation, if you will, as well as a strong handoff of intervention strategies between the interventionists and the elementary faculty. We are looking at the merits of this program. And universally, we recognize the positive impact that the interventionists have had, not only on our elementary age students, but on the faculty members in all of our elementary schools. We also recognize that we've had to make tough decisions this year relative to available state aid for Connectquot, as Dr. Centimore just outlined. And we look to the future in terms of considering what the forecast will be for our receipt of state aid. With these considerations, if the state aid is available in the future, we would seek to continue the interventionist program in whatever model that aid would allow, or we would seek to sunset the program in the absence of state aid. And so the charge for next year would firmly be that handoff between interventionist and elementary classroom teacher regarding those tier 1 interventions. So in addition to hands-on work with students, it's a transfer of the skill and strategy involved in implementing those interventions that we would seek to accomplish with 4 interventionists who would rotate amongst our 7 buildings. In terms of their distribution amongst the buildings, that's something that those 4 individuals would work on, certainly over the summer and into the beginning of the school year, to divide their service as equitably as possible amongst the 7 buildings, servicing the populations of those buildings, faculty, students, et cetera. But that's work that the people who are doing the work have to imagine. And so that's the proposal, giving the available funding that we have this year.
So this is our recommendation in terms of the interventionist model. This obviously does impact the instructional side of the accessing, which is on a subsequent slide. So before we get any further into this particular slide, and I'll speak about the high school administrative model, I would just like for the board to vet the recommendation on the instructional model, the elementary interventionist model with the 4 teachers next year rotating.
Yeah, so I just would like to say to the interventionalists who did invite us to come into the buildings to see the program, it really was amazing. And I personally, and I do know other people, supported the program 100%. Unfortunately, like Ms. Poppy said, due to cuts and how it could affect the classroom for the child, we had no choice but to go down to the four interventionalist model. I still am a big, again, supporter of the program. And I would, and I have mentioned this, would like to see maybe the Tier 1 and Tier 2 program redesigned so that it can support the students 100% instead of, having to go from building to building. I would like to see the program revamped and something to happen with that. But again, I just want to apologize because I know how hard the interventionist works and the fact that they invited us and we did all support it. I wanted them to know that it was definitely a hard decision and then I definitely feel really bad about what's going on.
So I actually have to agree with you. I was going to say that it pains me to have to go down to 4 because I thought the program, as we saw it, was amazing. The interventionists do a great job. But yes, as said, hard decisions had to be made, and this was one of them. And it's something that has to be done, but it's saddening to see it have to go this way.
When I hear you guys talk like this, I appreciate it more than you guys know because I support the program and I supported it that day. But when I hear it and I think about the day that we adopted the budget and nobody, and I do mean nobody other than actually you did, you sent the list, Jackie sent the list to Bob of questions. And at what point did you guys go line by line and try to find money? I voted no to the budget because I did not feel that this board did their due diligence to make sure that we were making the right decision.
That's a personal opinion.
I'm speaking, Mr. Murphy, and I would like to finish and then you can speak.
Okay.
I would like to finish and then you can speak. On 4/21, I received an email from April, we all did, giving some suggestions on things that should be cut, but it was a little too late, considering we already adopted the budget. The budget was already adopted. The budget was by the 23rd, and nobody was able to meet before the 23rd. You had to have that in, the adopted budget. Yes.
We had allotted money, and I wanted to now decide what we're going to do with that allotted money. That's how it works.
No, April, that is
You
how it
asked
works.
before we adopt it. Those are the time. That's the time when you
Okay, I think it's a
really hunt
matter
around
of opinion, because I
and you try
did
to look
speak
for this,
to our
not after.
head of the business who
Okay, well,
agreed that
I'm gonna
that's
just
how
read
it should
this
be.
then. I'm going to just read this because I foiled it. So because I foiled it, I can read it.
And I stand by my.
On
did that
April
cost, by the way?
21st, I'll tell you what, when board members don't want to give this community truth and transparency, I will do it. So maybe we
That's a
should just
matter of
read our
opinion
emails like
again.
I would do, or not hide things in emails. So Joe, this is from April, on Sunday, April 21st, 2004, 2:32 p.m. On a Sunday that you already approved the budget. These are the questions you asked before approving a budget, after you knew people
I
were
think
being
it's a matter
excess.
of opinion.
You wrote, I want to ensure we collectively look at all aspects of the budget to shave where needed. That is done before you adopt a budget.
A matter of opinion.
Community members have reached out about electives, clubs, freshman awareness, and security. So you are looking to cut security, freshman awareness, clubs, and electives.
No, I was looking to let people know what the community has asked me to look into.
You said, what areas are being looked into for cuts? I want to make sure we make cuts. We are looking at areas, not just education, especially core subjects. Hence why I'm asking now before decisions are made. April, the decisions were made.
They weren't.
The
They
decisions
were
were
still
made.
speaking about the decision.
You
now.
adopted a budget. You voted
That's
yes.
money.
You rubber stamped it. You knew 9 people were getting excessed. You knew 11.5 at the time positions were being excessed. You knew what was going on with this budget. You waited because you had buyer's remorse because people called you and
I
said,
didn't at
it's
all.
wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong.
No.
But I said there were things that were wrong and you didn't want to listen. Just want to throw it out
still
there that next
stand
time,
by what I
maybe
wrote.
listen.
No.
Maybe listen
No.
and make the decision to not adopt a budget
I'll
until you're
agree
positive
to disagree.
that you're okay.
I'll agree to disagree 100.
Does anybody else have anything on the interventionists?
Let me just add in terms of the fidelity of the program. Ms. Poppy, if you could just speak to this, that we do feel that while we're going to a 4-person model, that the needs of the children are going to be met with this model. And in the event, again, we don't have that crystal ball about next year's state aid, especially that category of foundation aid. In the event we're in a difficult spot once again with the foundation aid, that if we had to the subsequent year, 25-26, go to a true in-classroom model, that we'd still be meeting the needs of our children, which is the bottom line, which is our bread and butter as a school district.
Sure, I'll comment on that a little bit. The interventionists were born of a need to close gaps in students' foundational reading skills in particular that were exacerbated by COVID. And at the inception of the program, which picked up momentum continuously through its first year of service to the district, it was decided that the work of the interventionists would be very hands-on with students, right? An immediate work inside and outside the classroom in order to dissolve those gaps and to shore up students' foundational skills, because we know that those foundational skills are predictors for students' success in terms of literacy, in terms of their abilities for the future, for the remainder of their educational career. So that's a heady goal, right? And the request was for support now. During year 2, which is the program that the Board of Education visited a couple of months ago, that hands-on experience has continued, right? And that's due in part to the idea that we have an interventionist. In some buildings, we have 2 interventionists working daily with the faculty and children in each of our schools. When we reduce the number, we certainly are going to feel a shift. And in some ways, we have to shift the priority of the program, right? To have that firm handoff between the interventionists and the classroom teachers, to support them in their own delivery of Tier 1 interventions in their classrooms. So the service will still exist, but it will exist in a different way, right? And so I'm suggesting that next year's program or next year's approach will really look like a combination of both hands-on support and then support for our educators moving forward. So it will look and feel different. The word fidelity tells me that we're looking at replicating the exact program as it exists now. But with the reduction in staff, there's going to have to be a shift. But I'm confident that the staff who are doing the work are going to imagine it to be the absolute most comprehensive it can be across the school year next year.
How about that inquiry about kind of revamping, reimagining the Tier 1 and 2 that was just brought up?
So our district's RTI plan was recently updated, and it goes through an annual update. It's not necessarily a static document. It's not meant to be a static document. And so we are consistently looking at certain thresholds for services according to national norms, according to data that we have internally, and according to internal processes. So that annual revision and review of the document will continue. And Mrs. Inatali, I hope that that's, that offers some resolution behind your offering for that program.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
I know there was no formal vote requested, and a couple board members spoke up, but we're going to move forward with that model because we do need to, finalize staffing decisions, based on that component. The 4 interventionist model for next year. The other piece of this slide I will speak to, one of the other difficult decisions based again on the foundation aid situation was looking at our district-wide administrative team and determining, where we might have to make an adjustment. And so the recommendation that I'm bringing forth after a lot of consideration is for the high school administrative model to go from 4 assistant principals to 3. But that just can't be done in isolation. There's a lot of work and responsibilities that need to be shifted. And the plan there would be for a very big responsibility that the current building administration takes on in terms of master scheduling, for that to shift to director support. And then there's other components in terms of proctoring and assessment coordination, any potential student management overflow type situations that we would also look to have director support. So in terms of the administrative model, the administrative impact in terms of accessing and reorganizing, that's what my recommendation is, to adjust the high school assistant principal model and then look to provide support through our directors.
Okay, so as many already up here know, I am not a fan of this model. I would like to point out also that all of these discussions have been going on for the past few weeks after the budget was approved, because now we're trying to figure out where to cut, what to do, and where we're going to spend our money. So I do feel cutting the AP in the high school will has potential of hurting children. I really feel they're the face of the building and the face that most kids know. They're their first, stop. They get to meet their administrator of the grade. They are the person that they know is there for them if something happens. I just feel that these are the people that are constantly the presence in the building, running programs, running committees, running clubs. They either are running them or part of them, and they do a lot for the kids within the school district. So although there's not too many alternatives, I am not a fan of this, and I wish we could do something better. I did come up with non-educational cuts that other people didn't agree with, and that's fine too. We have to collectively as a board come up with these ideas, but I did feel that it would impact the children less if we went a different route.
I will never support cutting security. And since that was something that you are willing to cut in a time when I don't even know if people are paying as much attention to what your ideas were, but you should really tell them. Freshman Awareness is one of our best programs, one that myself, Jackie, Marisol, we've supported. I won't speak for you two, but I'll speak for myself. That was one of the best events we have here for mental health that also brings in curriculum-based. Why would we touch something like that? Is it because you just don't like some of the times of who runs it? It seems like it's always the same things that get brought up. Security. We have had the CTA reach out to us how many times this year saying we need more security. We were even told that they wanted security for open school night. We want security for adults and on open school night with the parents in the community. We have been asked for extra security for carnivals, for events at the school. There's never been so many inquiries for security. But that's where you first went. It's right in your email. Right to security, right to freshman awareness. You know what? Clubs, we all have agreed that we need to look through them. We need to make sure that they're all being utilized, and maybe some can, if there's very low enrollment, maybe there are two that could merge or things that could be done. But that's very small money. The money has to be found on the lines, line by line, looking at it. And it wasn't after the adopted budget. We're discussing now, are there ways to try to save people? That is true. But we are not in any way, shape, or form did this board do their due diligence the way that prior boards have that had financial experience that actually said line by line, that said, Bob, bring it tighter. Bob, do this. Bob, you know what I'm saying is true. Nobody said to him, hey, can you cut? I want you to cut this whole line, 20,000. Yeah, I told him get rid of the whole Board of Ed budget line. Am I lying?
We did.
Okay.
We did.
No, we didn't get rid of the whole budget line. And I also said, let's get rid of Newsday.
There was
Let's get rid of
12,000 there. We got down to
OLOF.
2,000.
How much is Newsday and OLOF?
Too.
You guys weren't on those emails, or you just don't pay attention to them because I wrote them?
But Jackie, also, I don't remember April ever saying she wanted to cut security. I remember some of her.
The email?
No, I read the email. I
Well,
heard
what I
you.
read was true, no?
No, those were concerns from the community that were coming to her. What she had recommended to us was something completely different. It didn't involve security. It involved different positions in admins. I don't know if you remember. Not many people were in favor of what she
I
had, but it did
remember-
not involve security.
I know what's going on here, Marisol. It's called cronyism. And the problem with this district, and we're seeing it all the time, is that you want to trust the superintendent and the cabinet when it's convenient for you guys, but you don't want to trust them all the time. So
You do the same thing.
Brian, I didn't trust anyone. I voted no. There you go. You guys.
voted no on purpose,
Okay.
just so you can say you voted no.
No, Brian, I voted no because the fund balance is not level. It's not, it should be more level. We're taking out of the reserves more than we're ever going to be able to put back. Do you know that? When the well runs dry, Brian, who's paying for it? I know who's paying for it. The taxpayers. Maybe do your due diligence like I do. Maybe you should.
You're the best.
So as
I
far
go to trainings, but I'm certainly no financial wizard. But I certainly would never be like you guys saying, I don't have any financial experience. So you know what? I'm just going to go with whatever they tell me. You know what? That's not oversight. That's
I
not
do have
budget
financial
review.
Experience. I do.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Then why didn't you ask any questions, Brian? 3 years. Where are the questions?
So you know exactly what I do and who I talk to?
No, there's no transparency. There you go.
No, transparency.
We can meet with Bob, though, on our own if we have questions, and I have, and I'm sure other people have.
As far as the high school administrative model, I have to agree that the assistant principals are the face of the students and that they do a lot for our staff, for our students and our children in the high school. It is unfortunate that we have to go through this route, and I would hope that it would at least be at a minimum for a year, and we could reevaluate next year, hopefully bringing in that fourth assistant principal, because I do agree that they are necessary and do a lot of work.
I hope everybody's paying close attention that this year we got cut $1 million. Am I wrong to say, Dr. Sentimore, that next year we're looking at more cuts? That people don't understand the financial issues coming to school districts because of the higher ups in the state of New York. We are going to get, I was told by government officials, Jackie, be prepared. Next year is going to be worse than this year. That's what I was told.
So in terms of the $1 million that we've been discussing, that was what we were hoping would be that moderate 3% increase. Early in the process, the governor was proposing cuts, which would have been about a $250,000, Bob, if I'm remembering correctly. Thankfully, that didn't happen on top of not getting the increase. We don't have a crystal ball, and certainly anyone administrative or instructional who gets excess, they go on a preferred eligibility list. This certainly ties into the conversation about the interventionist model. I always believe in Scout's motto, be prepared. So we are hearing concern. And certainly I expressed that if the governor has her way of getting the formula changed, it is highly likely to not be helpful to school districts like Connecticut in terms of leading to greater foundation aid. And, expenses go up each year. And certainly we're very mindful of our taxpayers, and Bob will show that, we came in below the tax cap. But we really need that state aid, that particular category of foundation aid. We need an increase every year, at least a moderate one, because expenses increase. So again, excess staff will go on a preferred list. If the situation is different next year financially, especially with the foundation aid, certainly we could revisit any position that was, even the attrition positions we can revisit, and always with a lens of an ongoing assessment of what our students need and our community needs and how we need to support our staff.
Can I ask you, is it the same as admin with the 7 years? So is it a 7-year recall for these teachers? Like, would it be a
Yes.
7-year recall?
Yes, it is.
So for 7 years, that was why I had asked about OLOS and Newsday for hiring purposes. If we could cut that down, if we could get rid of those budget lines, if we could get rid of that expense, that could potentially save $50,000, $60,000. I'm only saying it because for the next year, it doesn't look like we're gonna be hiring because we're gonna have a lot of people on this list that would get called back if they don't get a job elsewhere.
OLAS is a fixed cost that we pay and get BOCES aid on. So it's not as expensive as the actual cost is. We get whatever our aid ratio is, we get back from BOCES. We use OLAS for more than just certified personnel. We do use it for our bus drivers, our aides, our, things that are non-instructional. Without OLAS, without Newsday, there has to be some mechanism to advertise for positions. So, I don't know that cutting that would be
Other
most efficient.
districts were looking into that. That's where I had heard that other districts that were having some financial difficulties and had a lot bigger cuts than us were looking to do that. And they had said that they can do their own, on your own school webpage. You could certainly, do the same thing with, I understand what you're saying, it wouldn't be on such a broad, but you would still be able to post jobs and post things on ConnectQuad, on the actual web page itself. Or you
I
could
don't-
set it up like that.
And I'm sure you can, and I'm sure we have very talented tech people who could design programs and run programs such as that. I have to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know how to do that myself. So I would have to ask tech how intense that would be, and how labor intensive that would be. It's definitely something we can explore, and I would like to. But as I said, OLAS, ASOP, these are things that are BOCES aided, and I don't recall the exact number, but if we're getting 40-50% back on an expense to BOCES, it might be cost effective to do it that way.
Understood. Like I said, I look at some of these numbers and I say these are big numbers that we're looking at. And, we have other board members saying, let's get rid of a club or an elective, which is fine to look at, but it's a very minuscule number. We were looking at some of those stipends. They're not big stipends. It's not, you'd have to cut a whole lot to get that kind of chunk of money.
But if I understand, I'm sorry, Dr. Senamore, if I understand correctly, we would only have 7 or 8 positions that we would be able to recall. That's correct, right?
You're jumping the slide that comes after this one, but yes. you are
Yes.
correct.
All right, thanks.
And I just want to just comment real quickly about fund balance and reserve. Bob, you can, talk about this. We are very mindful that when you tap into the savings account, it's just like people's home savings account. You got that little jar on the counter where you put the change, you have to go on food shopping. Maybe I'm speaking back to my youth, but then you understand the point. When you rely on the savings account, which is essentially what fund balance and various designated reserves are, when you rely upon it, and then when the books close, usually August, September, with the auditors, the books close and you see what your carryover leftover is, and you're not able to replenish dollar for dollar, then you start to experience a decline. And that is certainly a concern. A lot of times, we have to do best estimates at the time of budget development and budget adoption in terms of things like interest on capital projects, even though you're waiting on SED approval. I know that will probably be a speaking point later on, that there's potential that not every project is going to get approved on time, and there could be some savings there with regards to interest, and then that comes back as fund balance. But then there's also utility costs, where we try to come up with a good estimate of utility expenses. And if they're too low, then that part of the budget ends up becoming underfunded and has to be assisted during the year, where another part of the budget might have some available funds. So there could be that various ebb and flow. It's not an exact science, and sometimes it's a timing thing, especially with SED approvals, especially with capital projects. And I know Bob and Mr. Allen wants to chime in as well. But we are very mindful, and it's important as part of our collective fiduciary responsibility, superintendent of schools, my cabinet, Board of Education, to be mindful of the savings account, which again is that combination of fund balance and reserves.
The last thing I just want to say from that, the next page we're going to be looking at the attrition was 12.5 and the accessing was 8, whether it turns to 7 now because we had somebody
That includes,
resign.
that includes the administrative.
No, I understand that. All these positions cut is a few $1,000,000 and still taxing at 3.29 increases budget to budget. Regardless how we say it, I'm not saying that as a taxpayer and as a parent and community member, I'm going to vote no. I will not want to see a contingent budget, but I will want to see in the future better eyes on the budget throughout the year. Not so much, Mr. Hauser, you did a fabulous job, and you did as well. But the board needs to do better on overseeing. We, budget to budget, we see all the costs, we're gonna have less aid, we need to do better.
Yes. So, my slide that both Ms. Napolitano Ferno and Ms. Mallon stole my thunder, which is fine. I have no problem. We're going to be talking about this budget in terms of what staffing changes are occurring. We did work very hard to do as much as we could through attrition, therefore not affecting any person. However, when push came to shove, there were decisions that had to be made that we will be accessing certain positions. So as Ms. Napolitano Ferno discussed, there are 12 and a half positions that are being cut through attrition, which include an administrator, several teaching positions, and half a clerical position. The accessing that is going to occur, and if the voters approve the budget, and then the board approves the approval on the 28th, then, or the 21st, whenever it is, I will be meeting with certain individuals. There is one assistant principal position which is being affected, as per the slide that Dr. Centimore had discussed with the high school AP. There are 7 teaching positions that we will be discussing with individuals, so that is a total of 8 accessing people. In complete transparency, with the assistant principal, the individual who will be accessed does have the right to his position as an English teacher, which ultimately will put another English teacher possibly out of a teaching position. However, we have made a request of the CTA, and they have until May 23rd to make the decision as to whether or not they want to choose to retire this year. And if we have enough interested parties, we will look to do things through attrition again, as much as we possibly can. So as I said, they have till Thursday, May 23rd to notify the district of such, and we will notify the board as soon as we know information about that.
Any questions on this slide? Okay, moving forward. So the slide that's up right now is what I consider a very good summary of the actual budget. Up at the top, the line that's highlighted in yellow shows the history of the actual budgeted expenditures. And then further over to the right, when we get into that, called the faded green column, you can see that the budget that the board adopted, 222,570, if I'm looking at it right, 575 is 3018. Okay, is about a 7,190. Having a tough time here. 206 increase, or 3.34% increase. As we work our way further down, those are the proposed revenues. So those are how we expect to pay for that budget. All right, it breaks it down by miscellaneous revenues, and then it goes into our appropriated fund balance, and then into the additional reserves. We did leave the line midway highlighted in the bright green, which is that 3% hold harmless, which unfortunately we did not receive in the state legislature's budget. Going a little further down to the next yellow line is the amount to be raised by taxes. So if we follow that all the way over, that's that 143, am I reading it right? 774,268. Okay, that's about a $4.5 million increase, which is equivalent to a 3.29% increase in the tax levy. Going down a little further, there are some estimated numbers here, which one of them is the estimated assessed valuation. We won't know that final number until the town of Islip provides it to us when they do the final roll of the valuation. But right now we're using an estimate of about 691 million. And that translates into various tax rates based on an individual residential home's assessed value. And that we broke down into 10 separate items in increments of $10,000. So you can see how much that might affect your own individual residents based on exemptions as well. But at a minimum, if you look at a home that's assessed at $10,000 and you carry that all the way over to the right, one would expect to see school taxes alone, just school taxes, increase about $66.29, which once again is the 3.29% increase. So for every $10,000 of assessed value, you can expect the school taxes to increase $66.29. Okay. Before I move further, once again, I said this is a summary here. In the next few slides, we're actually going to get into some of these numbers in detail. But as Dr. Centimore alluded to with budgeted expenditures, we do our best as we build this budget to try to either guess what some expenses are going to be. In other cases, we have a much better idea. So let me just give you a few examples, and Dr. Centimore actually highlighted a few good ones. When it comes time to utilities, we have a good idea of a history in each of our buildings as to what the usage might be. Unfortunately, we may not know what the utility is actually going to raise those respective utility rates. So for example, we just learned recently, I think it's National Grid, they're going to increase, and this is on a residential basis, 16% increase for natural gas costs. How that actually translates into our district being, I'll say, a demand customer, we don't quite know. But something like that is a significant increase that we don't exactly know how it's going to affect us. As Dr. Centimore said as well, interest rates, okay, there's some speculation right now as to what interest rates to borrow money are going to be, as well as, we have monies in reserves that we place with various banks. So we actually earn interest on our monies, as well as we pay out interest when we borrow in terms of a bond anticipation note or a tax anticipation note. So some numbers, we have a good idea what they're going to be. Others, we have to take almost our best guess as to where interest rates, utility costs might wind up in the future. So as Dr. Centimore said, some of those may come in lower, but we may need them to offset expenses that come in higher. Okay, the infamous tax cap, which I believe was implemented right around the 2012 school year. So we're probably in the 12th year of this, I call it the misnomer, the 2% tax cap, because it's never quite 2%. But in the case of our school district, through the New York State Comptroller's Office, we go through this complicated, I'll say, calculation to arrive at what our specific tax cap is going to be. So for this year, and it does change each year, for this year, the first line, which is, I'll call it the eligible tax cap, that's what we calculated with the Comptroller's Office, the maximum that our tax cap could be. And that was to the far right there, you see the 3.35%. I mentioned on the prior screen the proposed levy, all right, the amount we're going to collect from the community. would be 3.29%. So we're coming in less than the tax cap. And in terms of dollars, that equates to a $76,000 savings to the community. Okay, this slide here references state aid, and I do want to be careful. When we talk about state aid, if you look at the very top line, foundation aid, okay, that is the most significant line item of the aid. In that pinkish column there, you can see at the top, about $35,324,000 is the amount we expect to receive in foundation aid. That number is identical to what we are receiving this year. So once again, we never received that 3% hold or save harmless amount, so our foundation aid is flat. The next line item there, UPK, that's the Universal Pre-Kindergarten Program. So the state, once again, is allocating the same amount of money to that program in order for us to operate. So no increase there, even though we may have an increase with the contractor who actually operates the program, or I could say we could have an increase. The third line, and pretty much all the way down to the bottom, so starting with the BOCES aid, this is what Dr. Centimore referenced as these expense-based aids. So the amount of money that we receive from these line items is based on how much we actually spend and using this school year as a base. So when you see the BOCES line, that number 3 line, we subscribe to a significant number of services with BOCES, anywhere from software subscriptions that we might have with them to different consultants we might use. And a lot of those, most of those services or products, I'll say software, are aidable. So we have a percentage that is our aid percentage. So we receive, I'll say, a refund back on those expenditures. And that's what we're estimating on that third line, all the way over to the right, about 3.2 million to come back to us in terms of BOCES aids. And that continues all the way down to the various categories of aid, working your way down towards the bottom with building aid, which is pegged to capital projects, high tax aid, which could be pegged to special needs students, and also the bottom one, which is supplemental public access. That would be students who live in the Connecticut community but do not go to our schools. They would go to a private school, parochial school, and such. So, like I said before, out of the 35 million we're expected to receive in foundation, the total aid is $56 million. So that foundation aid is a significant number. And unfortunately, this year, we're not receiving that 3% that we were hoping we would have received. Any questions on state aid? Okay. All right, so this just gives you another idea of how much the budget is, as it's broken down into different categories, costs, and where those expenses are allocated. So a typical school district, you can see there, I think we have 6 categories from general support, instruction, transportation, employee benefits, our debt service, and then interfund transfers. Interfund transfers would be monies that we transfer from our general fund to another fund, such as the special aid fund. So let's say, as an example, to operate the extended school year program during the summer, we would transfer monies over there to make up the difference between what the state reimburses us versus what the program actually costs. This here is our revenue slide. So once again, just going back to that summary page that I had, this breaks down the different revenue sources from our appropriated fund balance to miscellaneous revenues to each one of our individual reserves. And then as you get down towards the 3/4 of the way down, you can see 25% of our revenues come from state aid. About 64.5% of our revenues come from the community in terms of residential and commercial taxes. Okay. So here, this slide just focuses on the impact, really from an assessed value to a residential home. I spoke about this a little bit earlier in increments of $10,000. But here, the first bullet, so for a home base that's got an assessed value of $50,000, we broke that down per month. One would expect that to cost the school budget to cost $27.62 per month, more per month on a home assessed at $50,000. Further down on the screen, in the $10,000, $30,000, and $50,000, we kept those at the annual increase amounts. So like I said before, a home assessed at $10,000, we would expect to cost $66.29 per year. Okay, contingency budget. So this is the big what if. If a school budget, let's say next Tuesday on May 21st, when the community votes, if the budget does not pass, one of the possible likelihoods could be that the district would have to go on a contingency budget. There's a special calculation that's been done, but for the most part, a contingency budget means that however much money the district collected from the community in the current school year, so the levy cannot increase by $1 more, cannot. It has to remain flat. So for the most part, a district is expected to operate the next year collecting $0 extra dollars from the community, but still having to operate the district at all the additional expenses and increases. When we do that initial calculation, and I highlighted that column in yellow over there, the budget, the proposed budget would go from $222 million down to about $217 million. So that's a pretty significant cut if we were to go on a contingency budget there. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, so next Tuesday, like I said, May 21st, you're going to see a proposition. It's also detailed on the budget newsletter. If everyone has a copy, or if you want to get a copy in the back. On the very last page of the budget newsletter, the same proposition appears. All right, and the voters in the community will be asked to vote on this $222,573,018 proposed expenditure budget with an estimated 3.29% increase in the tax levy. That's the only proposition that is on that'll be on the ballot. Okay, and just to recap here, once again, this budget is under the tax cap, okay? We're not going up to the maximum. The vote will be on Tuesday, May 21st, all right, from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the high school and the two middle schools. Okay, and here's the end of the slide presentation-wise. We can get into any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions, but I do want to let you know that the remaining pages of this presentation, and I believe that goes from page 18 all the way to page 45. From 18, I think, to page 20, we took the budget and broke it down into 3 pages from the highest increase line items to the codes that actually had decreases. So for transparency purposes, we tried to detail it so you could see where the big increases are coming from, as well as where the decreases. And then all the way from page 21 up to page 45 are all of the detailed line items that make up the budget. So everything is there for you to see. This is also in the budget book. I think there's a book back there that's that's available. So any questions, we're here to help and answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. Does any of the trustees have any questions? Okay, I will now open the floor for the public comment portion of the agenda. This public comment period is for comments or questions on the proposed 2024-2025 budget only. The time available will be limited to 3 minutes for each speaker. I will call individuals forward one at a time. Please wait for my acknowledgement before stepping to the podium. You should have received a number card from security on your way in. If you have not, please see a security guard in the back of the room. Number 1.
Hi, so first question is in regards to the May 23rd deadline to let the district know of intent to retire. At my job, I'm a union employee and the company just got in a lot of trouble for the way they did layoffs. Does that May 23rd deadline, does that violate any union rules?
No, it was an agreement that the union and the district entered into. I believe it was at the last meeting where we had a memorandum of agreement, which was drafted by the attorneys, signed by both the board president and the union president, and we're not in violation. And we have, Connecticut has done this in the past, so it's similar to what we have done before.
Okay, it just seems like a really short time frame. So figured I'd ask.
It was, but we had been in discussion, and despite the short time frame, the union has been aware of it.
Okay. The next question that I have is there seems to be a lot of line items that the budget for this year, like the adopted budget for 2023, 2024, and the adopted budget or the draft budget for this year is a lot more than what was actually spent. So like a couple of things that I've highlighted are, just because you guys are at the top of the page, sorry, BOE supplies and materials, 2250, sorry, too small for my reading glasses. 2250 was budgeted, 380 was spent, and another 2350 is budgeted. Then there was one, public information and services, 88,000 was budgeted, just 36,000 was spent, 96,000 was on this budget, things like that. Are those higher numbers because of like making sure that the reserves and the fund balances are full? Or what, why are there so many line items that there's more budgeted than spent? Like, percentage-wise, like really high?
So that's a very good question. And if we just focus, if you don't mind, on that first line item, because it's on page 21, all the way up at the top. And I do apologize. The print is very fine and it is difficult for some of us to read these numbers. But there's a column that's called fiscal year-to-date expenditures.
Yeah.
As of March 31st, 2024. So that's the last time we actually updated that column. So we had all of April to go, all of May, and all of June. In many of these categories, and for different reasons, we tend to see the expenditures increase in those last 3 months of the year, as opposed to, let's say, a salary code where a person would be paid evenly throughout the 10 months of the school year. So that's just, I'll just focus on that particular one. I don't have the information in front of me as to what that actual expenditure is as of today, but I would believe we've probably issued purchase orders and spent more of that $2,250 that was budgeted in the current year.
Okay. My next question is, I'm sorry, Dr. Centimore, you brought up the buses, so I'm going to have to go back to the buses. We know the buses are coming. We know that the electric vehicles is going to be a thing. why are we spending so much money on new buses that I'm assuming are going to be diesel buses that in 2-3 years we're not going to be able to use?
So the mandate, which is in law, is this. As of 2027, any new bus purchased has to be of the e-bus electric variety. And by 2035, a school district, and I believe there are other type of municipalities and certainly private vendors, because a lot of districts rely on private vendors. We certainly supplement with a private vendor. By 2035, your entire fleet does. So we are a few years away. And the reality is, and this is why there's been tremendous advocacy, is that PSE&G and other, and whatever electric providers there are across the state, the grids can't support this. And the cost of these electric buses, even though there are some grants available and there will be some aid and there will be some rebates, the cost of the big buses and the smaller buses are around 3 times the amount. And that's not even getting into the infrastructure needs in terms of charging stations or any potential fire suppressant systems. And we're talking the potential of electric fires. To my knowledge, there's been no health and safety study done about having these kind of electrical power plants, storage plants on grounds. We have 130 buses right next to the district office, right next to Sycamore, right next to our residents, a stone throw from the public library. I'm not aware of a health and safety study on this either. There's been a lot of advocacy, and so far the law hasn't changed, but we're hoping it does. Nobody is opposed to going green. We all love green, all right? We all love green, but we also need this to be realistic. And across New York State, there's tremendous advocacy to push the timeline back. Hasn't happened yet. So like I said earlier, it is that object in the rearview mirror that's going to get closer and closer, a tremendous expense. And if it's going to come at the same time of a change in the foundation aid formula, which I think is 60% plus of our total aid package, and if that new formula is not going to be helpful to school districts like Connecticut, that's that superstorm scenario. So for this year, we're staying the course with the traditional type of buses. But as we get closer, we're going to have to adjust accordingly to what the law mandates. And again, what can you do when you don't agree with the law? You have to follow the law, but that's where advocacy kicks in. And we've been advocating.
You said a few years. It's actually 11 years. It's 2035. So there's plenty of time for this.
Well, in terms of 2035 is when your entire fleet, the purchasing, any new purchases, 2027. Got it.
But
Yeah.
it's also
It does
gonna
get
be-
confusing.
Yeah, it's also going to be a type of thing where all of a sudden the entire fleet has to be replaced. So like, why not be doing it in stages?
And those stages would start at least by 2027. I understand your point. It's a major transition to shift to the charging stations. It's a major infrastructure, haul. But certainly we wouldn't look to do the whole fleet if the law doesn't change in 2027. And we'd have to see the current fiscal reality for our district and what the fiscal reality of New York State looks like in terms of how public education is being supported with state aid, especially the foundation aid component. Great questions.
Your question when you first spoke, that I remember a few years ago, going back about 5 years ago, Eileen was on the board and she was very big, Jesse, you might remember this, on the actual budget being like the actual, getting closer to the actual. She used to say, I want a budget to budget actual numbers. She used to tighten the budget so close to what it was. And sometimes we would have to take money out of the reserves, but she wanted to see those lines more exact. And in a lot of ways, that might be something for next year for us to look at.
Yeah, I can appreciate you asking those questions because when I was going line by line, that was one of my biggest thing was, well, we only spend 10% of it. Why did we budget so much? So I can definitely appreciate where you were coming from because I had those exact same questions to try to get it closer to that because, all that extra in there, I wasn't sure that that was actually
And
necessary.
some of them do look like small numbers, but when we're talking about accessing teachers, like it might add up to one salary.
Thank you. Those were great questions. Number 2? You yield. Number 3? I'm just going to ask you to press the button on the mic. Thank
Okay.
you.
I have a question about I'm trying to get to the page, I'm sorry. Hold on a second. Okay, so it's the students that are being shipped out, Catholic school or whatever, private school. What's the number of our welfare children that we're housing and/or homeless children that we're housing? Because I know that they have the choice to go to, let's say they want to go to Riverhead. It's incumbent upon us to ship them there and pay that fee. So what are the numbers on that and how much is the money?
So we have approximately, 60 students who are deemed homeless. That's the official term.
My question is the ones that are being housed in this district. Like, for instance, the old Triangle Inn. They had welfare housing up there, okay? A little room, you could have 5 or 6 people in it, and they were being paid $4,800 a month, okay? So they could have 3 or 4 kids in that room, okay? And if those kids wanted to go to CI, Riverhead, anywhere, we had to pay them to school because they were being housed in our district. Do you know what I'm talking about?
So you're talking about students who, let's say the Department of Social Services places the students in our district.
Yes.
That those, in a sense, are deemed homeless, those students.
No, some are.
Right.
Okay.
And if they're homeless, they have the right to choose which school they want to go to, whether it be Connecticut or the district that they came from. So if they're placed by Department of Social Services, Department of Social Services picks up the cost to transport those students. We don't.
No,
pick that cost.
that's incorrect. Okay. If we are housing, okay, if that building up there deems there's an empty apartment, okay, across from Ronkonkoma, or there's the Triangle Inn, I don't know what it's called now, okay, and a family moves in to one of those apartments / hotel rooms, okay, and they have 4 children. Those children decide to go to Riverhead, okay, go there. It has not changed. That money falls on us.
So I'm talking specifically the Suffolk County Department of Social Services. If they place the child, and I'm just talking a child, in a residence in our community, Department of Social Services absorbs the cost of transporting that student, in your case, to Riverhead. We do not pay that.
That's categorically untrue.
Okay. If you want to provide me the evidence, please.
Go to town hall. It's right there. I went there and I fought the expansion of Triangle Inn, okay, because the sum falls on us.
Right. I'm not referring to the students who decide they want to
Clearly, you don't
attend
have the
our-
answer,
I
okay?
do have
Because
the
you're
answer.
giving me an inaccurate answer.
Okay. If you want to get me the evidence, please.
Sarah, wait 1 second. I just want to tell you that we did have a transportation meeting this week, and I was putting it on the agenda for next week, that we do have what is called the homeless children of the district. And I only found out this week that sometimes these children who are considered homeless can live, and I'll give the example of Queens. And we actually pick them up in Queens and bring them here. So one of the people in transportation asked, and I want to know this answer, and I think as a district we need to know, how long is the period that we deem them homeless? Because it's now been many years for some of these students. So I do believe this as a district does need to be looked at, just because of the fact that these are long commutes. And again, if someone doesn't think that they have to move back into the community, Well, I'm hoping not, but again, I think as a district, we need to look at it.
Okay,
This is something that,
hold on, no shouting from the audience. Mr. Spencer, sorry, has some input.
If I could just interject, Bob is quite correct. When we're talking about picking up the tab, the bill for the transportation costs, it's going to come down to who the placement agency is, right? So in the case that Bob's discussing, when DSS places a child, then the county is going to pick up the cost of the transportation. We're not talking about picking up the cost of the education, just the transportation, right? In terms of homeless children, they're homeless until they have a fixed regular nighttime residence, right? So it's not necessarily indefinite. It's until they obtain what we'll call permanent housing, right? And at that point, they're deemed residents of the district within which the permanent housing is located.
Thank you. Is there a number 4? 5. Oh, okay. We will now introduce our board candidates for our board election next week. Candidates will be able to introduce themselves to the Board of Education and may briefly provide their backgrounds. Candidates will be called up based on the ballot order, which was determined by a random drawing conducted by the district clerk in front of witnesses, including one of our own candidates. I will now call the first candidate, Mr. Brian Berger.
Hello, thank you. I'm Brian Berger. I moved to Connecticut 10 years ago. I live in Oakdale with my wife and my 2 children. My daughter is a 2023 graduate, and my son currently attends Boston Elementary. My wife is a teacher's aide at Sycamore. We really love Connecticut, and that's why I'm standing up here. I have a background in information technology. I went to school at Briarcliff College. I have worked in the mortgage industry for over 2 decades, from sales to loan operations. I was director of marketing for a period of time. Perhaps you've seen some of it. I'm currently the chief information officer for the company. I'm involved in all of our local civic associations. I belong to multiple PTAs. I'm heavily involved in SEPTA. That's basically me in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm second. I will go up to the podium. Hello. So I am Marisol Mallon. I have been a board trustee for the last 3 years. I am born and raised in Brentwood, and I moved to Connecticut 17 years ago to hopefully find a great town and education for my children, and that's exactly what my husband and I found. I raised 3 children. One graduated 2 years ago. He's now just completed his sophomore year of college. My daughter is a junior at the high school, and my son is in 8th grade at OBMS. I've always been involved in their education and all the PTAs of the schools that they've attended, and that led me to run for the board, and I have loved my tenure, and I hope to be able to continue it. Ms. Taragosa?
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Torregrosa. I am a 2010 graduate of Connecticut. I went to John Pearl, and then it was OBJ at the time, but now it is OBMS. I currently work in a position called a community liaison, and I am engaged with a lot of different community organizations, helping to kind of forge relationships between them and offer resources to the communities that we are in. I have already passed my licensing exam, so I am a licensed social worker. I graduated with my bachelor's in social work last year, and I graduate in 2 days with the master's in social work. And I was awarded the Master of Social Work Student of the Year by the National Association of Social Workers. And I just, what else? I participate in the curriculum committee. I love that meeting. And the drug and alcohol task force that we have, which are both great. And we do pretty cool stuff in those meetings. So I love those. Everyone should come if you don't. And I am also a credentialed alcoholism and substance abuse counselor through New York State OASIS. And although I don't practice the counseling right now, I do have a special place in my heart for that. And I just do love this district. I believe that we are absolutely top tier. We saw it in the beginning of that presentation. That was really cool to see all the different things that we've been awarded. And I just want us to be recognized for that going forward. And I'd like to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Napolitano?
Hello, everyone. I'm Salvatore Napolitano. I have been in this district for 46 years. We moved here before our children even started school. They started in 1979 in Cherokee and went through Peconic or RMS, whatever you want to call it these days, and Connecticut High School. They did all of their years right here. Each of them went on to a different college and a different career. They have done very, very well, and they received an excellent education through Connecticut. That would be a great story, but then the next generation came up, and I have 4 grandchildren who are either graduated or going through Connecticut, and the first 2 have graduated. One has graduated college. He's working on his master's. Another is working on a nursing degree. The other 2 are winding their way through. And it's been sports and music and art and every good thing that goes on in Connecticut. And I would never want to see that change. I would never want to see Connecticut be the place where we're not top tier, because the education my children got rocketed them to careers that they wanted and careers they were able to work for. I just think that there's going to be a lot of difficult choices, and we're going to have to be smart about making them. The mandates that are coming down, if they come down without any changes.
Just a brief introduction, sir. No campaign.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
No problem.
Sorry. Oh, okay. I have a master's degree from Adelphi University in finance, in money and banking. I have a bachelor's degree in finance and investment from Baruch College in New York City. I'm a 4-year Air Force veteran. I served during the Vietnam War. I've been with the Greater Ronkonkoma Civic Association. I'm a member of the Bohemia Civic Association, the Oakdale Civic Association, the Oakdale Historic Society. I've been on committees from way back when, Budget Advisory Committee in 1980, Superintendent Search Committee, Security Committee. I've been members of PTAs through all the years that my children and grandchildren have gone through schools. I've done bake sales. I've done anything that the school needs to, if they're looking for a volunteer. Since I've been retired, I love to do that stuff. Coach St. Joseph CYO for 20-something years. I was the vice chairman of that organization for 16 years. It's a pretty full life, and I still have a few miles left, so if you like me, thanks.
Thank you. So the votes will be next Tuesday from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Connecticut High School, Ronkonkoma Middle School, and Oakdale Bohemia Middle School. Can I please get a motion and a second to adjourn the public hearing of the annual meeting and to resume the business meeting?
Motion.
Can I get a second? Brian and April both motioned. I just need a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, we have Board of Ed topics. We have the high school traffic pattern, Miss Inatelli.
Okay, so You know what, as board members, community members reach out to us all the time and want information on certain topics. So I've had many people, it's election season, so people think of all the ideas and different things that they want. As many people know, the high school, getting into the high school in the morning is it's a pain in the neck. There is backup. You sit online for a very long time. And I know sometimes it's over a half an hour you're standing online just to get into the high school. We do have a back entrance to the high school that has a gate. So community members wanted to know if we could open this gate. It was originally proposed that the buses would come through the gate, but after speaking to many staff members and community members, as we know, the buses drop off in the front, and for safety purposes, it's better to keep them there. It was suggested that the seniors who have parking passes, who park in the back parking lot, and teachers would be allowed to go through the back gate. The back gate would be open 1 hour in the morning and half an hour in the afternoon. I asked administration to look into opening the gate and if it would cost us anything. As it's just been discussed the entire night, we're making cuts and we do not have money to spend on opening the gate. So I wanted to know if this is something that would cost us money or not. I also was told by community members that the town of Islip had approved the road many years ago. Now, I did not call the town myself, and I'm relying on the information I received from community members. But if this is true and it was an approved road, I did want to know why we're not utilizing it. At this point, administration actually does not have all of the answers yet, and they do want to give an informed decision. So maybe next meeting or the meeting after, they will update us on this. But I do want the community to know that I have heard you, I have asked the question, and hopefully we can get more information on that. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a lot to be said about this. So 2 years ago, when I was running for the board, 2 weeks before the election, it's about the same time, mailboxes with stuff saying I wanted to open the back gate, which was definitely not true because I know the history of it, which I tried to share with the board. Unfortunately, and I'm going to ask Mr. Allen in a few minutes to get up to speak, but if that's okay, because I know that you know a lot of this information, some of it. But here's the deal. It's not a road. It's just asphalt. So the problem with that is you can't just say, let's open the back gate and we're going to just have people go on it. That's first. In the town of Islip did not approve it as a road. The town of Islip, right now, there is nothing there that the town of Islip has right now. So it was 2 architects. I was told 2 or 3 architects came in. It was 1.8 million to open the road back then. Okay? You must adhere to all town access rules and regulations of the road. It's not wide enough to be anything other than an emergency exit or a one-way street. You would have drainage, fencing. Buses couldn't make the radius turns. The JV baseball fence field would need to be looked at. All of these things, it's not a email to administration, hey, I want to open the fence. We're accessing 8 or 9 bodies. I mean, right now it looks like 8. But it might be 7, it might be 6. It's still too many. It's too many when you start talking about this. 1.8. I mean, not for nothing, but it's not a real road. You need curbing. You need fencing. You need to do your due diligence to get this kind of information. You certainly don't bring these kind of things up, in my opinion, to this kind of, to have in the middle of budget season, to have the super looking at something like this when we should be looking at what can we do to tighten the budget. One, not add a $1.8 million road. And this should definitely be something that you have a committee and you have people talk about, because there are people who would not be happy with that. It's a safety issue. There's a lot of different issues that we've had come up. Okay, we need to find the paperwork from the architects from the many years ago. There was a board member who was here for decades, who her famous line about that fence 2 years ago was, it's the $1 million road to nowhere, Jackie. That's what she told me, $1 million road to nowhere. So you have to understand, well, yes, I would love for there to be 2 entrances and exits. I've had to sit on that line. You also have to look at the price tag and what it would cost to do it effectively, efficiently, and you can't have a second entrance and not have security. So you're now going to be adding more personnel. There's a lot to be spoken about for this. I had advocated a week ago when I was at a softball game, and the team and parents and some other people came up to me, and we were discussing how they play the national anthem and how far away the baseball flag pole is and how far away the track flag pole is. I said, I'll advocate for one. I even offered I would donate one. When Dr. Sentimore walked up to the field, I even said, this is what I'm going to be advocating for in an email. I said, and then in April, you had said, this isn't a good time. It's money is to be spent. Jackie, a flagpole that, by the way, many in the community said they would donate. And graciously, Mr. Allen found a company that was willing to donate it. So now it's costing nothing. So you came back at me in an email saying that it was this cost. And why are we looking at something that costs so much? A flagpole costs this. Opening the road is up here. You got to look at these kind of things and you got to get the history. And when you do, you got to really understand that budget season is probably not the time to do it. Probably the best time to do it is like July, when you can start talking about, that's when you would start doing it over the summer and talk about something like this and get somebody in, like an architect, to give us this number. But the number is 1.8 from years ago. Could you imagine what it is today? John, would you mind speaking?
I was going to speak really quick. As I said, it was something that I had to come to administration to ask. And if the community wants the answers now, I don't say, let me wait till July to give you those answers. So the community members asked about the gate. I'm bringing it to administration to guide the community on what it would cost. You are correct. I would not spend the money. I wouldn't spend the money on a flagpole. I'm definitely not going to spend the $1.8 million on a road. So since I follow that, but would like the community to know the answers, this is why we're discussing it today. And I'm okay with the fact that administration doesn't have the correct answers. Well, not the correct, the facts, everything all together, because they don't have that paperwork. They didn't look at everything. So no, I'm not going to put them on the spot and have them answer questions that they're not fully prepared to answer. And I think the community is okay with the fact that we've now brought it and they'll get more information.
So 2 things here. One, we're very mindful of the traffic concern, arrival dismissal at the high school. We had conversations about it early this year. We continue to look at that and to try to think of ways to improve it. In terms of this recent inquiry about the back gate, I do want to make sure that we get accurate information. And, and so Mr. Allen is trying to go back and find the history in terms of what's documented. I believe there may have been some architectural changes in terms of where these documents are. So the fact-finding component is very important. I definitely would love to have an informed conversation as soon as possible, but I just want to make sure that it's truly an informed conversation. I just want to have accurate information, and that's what.
This is easy for him to be able to answer. What I have to ask him.
Is it general? Because we don't.
Yeah, general. He'll be able to answer this because this is knowledge of a regular road.
All right, John. Give
Would you need fencing? Would you need drainage? Would you need to build a road?
I apologize. Excuse me. So.
Do you want water?
No, it's not going to help right now. It'll probably make it worse, but I appreciate it. So when you look at the infrastructure behind the high school, I personally, from an infrastructure perspective, from a facilities perspective, have concerns. The road is a simple maintenance road. It's not meant for daily use. Would we need to get a environmental engineer? Would we need to get a civil engineer? Would we need to test the strength of the road and whether or not we would need to do curbage and drainage and, depending on the times used, some sort of security considerations and everything else? Absolutely. Big picture type stuff. There's a lot of stuff that would need to be discussed even from an infrastructure perspective. Beyond that, Dr. Sentimore talks about trying to find the information. We've been in contact with the architect from 20 years ago who seemed to have been the one to propose that first set of plans. Because they were proposed and never acted on, it's not a set of documents that I've ever seen, so we're looking for those right now. In addition, I've also reached out to the town of Islip. Town of Islip has multiple divisions, Department of Public Works. I know the individuals in that department. I've reached out to them directly. They said that it would probably not fall underneath their categories. It would be underneath traffic and safety. Thankfully, I also know the person who is actively involved in that division as well. So they only work on a part-time basis. So I am waiting for a phone call back. I called yesterday. If I don't get a call back tomorrow, I'll try inquiring again. But there's going to be a lot of time involved in gathering all this information because it's so many different sources and so many different variables involved.
Appreciate it. I just wanted April to hear that it's not just an open, you can't just say open the road and no, in your emails, it was very clear. You open the road and let the seniors go out. Oh, no, forget that. Open the road and let the buses go out. There's no radius to make those turns. You can't just say open the road. It's also a security issue. There's a lot of different things that come along with opening a road.
I would think we should, because it's such a, I live on that road, residential area, you need the people that live right there. It would be literally their backyard. We would need, we'd want their input as well to see, where they stand. That's their road. That's my road. That's a huge part of it. There's a lot that goes into this.
It was made for an emergency.
And even in emergency egress,
Right.
we wanted our kids. If the plane came and landed, that's done plenty, he was here. If the plane came and landed in our field, terrible accident, they expected our kids to walk around the plane and go into Connecticut State Park, all the way at the end and walk out. So that was the reason why we won the emergency egress.
Right.
After behind it. But it'll never be a road. It can't. The people that live, not just on that road, all around, were adamantly opposed to it.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything on that? Security, Ms. Napolitano-Ferno.
That was just what I brought up before, that there was an email and that would be something that I will never look to decrease. Right now, during one of the most criminal times in history, we are seeing Suffolk and Nassau more crime than we have seen in the last 2 decades. Why in the world would we say, you know what? I don't want to, we can't access this. Let's access security. Let's look at security. What can we cut? What can we cut? We had the CTA president sending emails that he wanted more security. We've had schools ask for more security. We had central office looking for more security. Can't keep saying we want more security and at the same time want to chop it. It's impossible. And if we have a decline in enrollment, it isn't security that you'd be cutting. Our buildings are manned not by the number of students they're protecting, but by the square footage they are protecting and the criminal element outside. Not what's going on if we have 1,000 less students for the last 10 years. I wouldn't say, you know what? Cut security. They can do more with less. That's the last place you're going to be doing it right now when we're having serious issues outside criminally.
I think you misunderstood. Those were categories and not cut the entire programs. And I would like for the record to be told that this never even came up because I didn't even get a chance to talk about those topics in executive session. But I did speak about other topics and other non-educational areas that I did feel would be cut. For the record, what me personally, for the security, I did question on the weekends when security is sitting in parking lots. And I wanted to actually know how many people have ever actually trespassed or went and, defamed the building, did anything. So these were my questions that I never even, again, had a chance to ask. So I would like to point that out. As for freshman awareness, again, not the entire program, not being overnight, so we didn't have to pay for the extra food, the speakers in the morning, all these chaperones to be there. I again, didn't have a chance to speak in executive about this, but I would like, again, to point out, and I'm not going to go through all the different categories, but because sometimes we only have one person in each role, so I don't like to point that out. But there are other areas that, again, I felt could have been cut.
Okay, and I'm just going to read one more time. Community members have reached out about electives, clubs, freshman awareness, and security. These are the things that you have brought forward. So to say you haven't, you have looked to cut security, the one area that I don't understand, and I certainly don't understand bringing up freshman awareness as a solo act. We have how many events that go on in this district that we support financially? Why would you pick the one that has the most wonderful mental health and curriculum-based backing? It was beautiful this year. Beautiful. Awesome.
Jackie,
we were all there.
I'm the one who asked for it to come back overnight. I'm not against it, but I have to be fiscally responsible and put these things out if community members are asking.
Well, I don't know how you asked for it to come overnight. I've been advocating for this for 5 years, strong.
And I sat at the PTA meeting and that year it came back.
Well, strong. I know what I've been advocating, and I certainly would never have put that in an email. When I was looking at cuts, I was looking at newspapers, lost. Like, I was looking at things that didn't hurt people, didn't hurt students. Well, you're looking at cutting clubs. You're looking at cutting electives. You're looking at cutting security. You're looking at cutting freshman awareness. Let's just be honest. You didn't want me to foil the email. I had to foil the email.
Jackie, I don't want you to foil the email because you spend money.
Then April,
it wasn't
do us all a favor and read it in public.
It's the fact that how you read it and how you interpret things.
Read it in public.
You interpret things very differently than myself. That it's just a matter of opinion and difference of it.
April, you have a problem with reading emails in public. Because Brian, transparency should be given to people.
But Jackie, you literally read the first line that said community members are asking. So April was bringing it forward from community members that were asking about this
Marisol,
program.
the first time she's brought security up?
Jackie, I'm just saying that you read the email.
How many times has April brought up cutting security?
Food committee, Miss Ina.
I know, nobody wants to tell the truth.
Okay, so again, lots of complaints from the community, and we've had this for, since, 20-something years ago till now. So, it's the same complaints that when there's not food available or there's less food or, some of the choices. So I had an opportunity to speak to some of the staff. And I have to say to the entire community that these staff, so many of them truly care about our kids, and they want them to have choices. They want them to have more tasty, items on the menu. As we know, we are New York state regulated, and there's only certain kinds of food that we can have. But I do want you guys to know that they do go above and beyond to, like I said, season the food, try to make it more, appetizing to the students. As for the portions, they are regulated also. 6 ounces of, if you get a chicken sandwich and then mac and cheese, it's 6 ounces. If you get another item, I forget what it was, it's 3 ounces. So these are things that are regulated in the school. But I've also had them tell me a lot of complaints about our food service program. So after listening to parents and the food staff, what I feel, and I did bring it to administration, and I spoke to them, and there are signs in the high school that the deli sandwiches can be selected, upon request. I really feel that it's not our staff, it's not the students, it's not the administration, that it's really, someone has to hold Airmark accountable. Someone has to hold them accountable for ordering our food. Someone has to hold them accountable for what they are ordering. I'd like to point out that the the head cook manager at the high school. It's funny because we being the board, we get caught up in different things and we forget. But like she pointed out, where are our specialty days? Where's our guest chef day? Those are all things that we were supposed to have, that Aramark did sit here and tell us we would have those things. It's almost the end of the school year and we haven't had the 5 different specialty, that you get the special kinds of food, not the same thing that we always order. And again, this was a cook manager who pointed this out, that let us know that she wants to go above and beyond and give the kids these things. She says like the deli choices. Right now we have turkey and ham. She said, where's the roast beef? Last year she used to cook the roast beef herself and slice it. Where's the salami every once in a while? Where's the turkey bologna? Like these things aren't there. When they buy the sauces, they're buying Cisco brands instead of Red Pack brands. So I really, again, I think it's holding who we choose, no matter if it's Aramark, Whitson's, whoever it is, holding them accountable for what they're ordering, how much they're ordering, making sure that our students, there are no shortages and that we're able to feed them and have the food to feed them and have some appetizing food, because we can choose a different sauce versus the one we have. And especially with the funding that we're getting now through the program. I also would like to point out, and as many of you know, I was not a fan of how the approach we took to making sure that we had people for the breakfast and lunch. In this event, so we did get 2 more full-time people at the high school, but those people were already working extra hours because they couldn't even keep up with what we had. So making them full-time really didn't give us any help. That didn't give the high school any help because of the fact that these people already were working the extra hours. So my request, and obviously the community can reach out to me, is that somebody, and Bob, I know you're the head of that, but I really would like them, Aramark, to be held accountable for again, the food, what they're ordering, and ensuring that we can have the little better sauce, because we have the money to do that. Where are these specialty days? Why do we only have 2 choices for the deli? These are some questions that hopefully next meeting, and again, I don't expect you to have all these answers tonight, but that, maybe we could find these things out. From what I hear, the Whitson's, the woman who had the same role, she used to help out in the kitchen. She used to actually work the cashier and help the staff. They used to call it the 4 hours of fun. This year, for the first time, they don't call it the 4 hours of fun anymore. And that's actually saddening me, because like I said, they care so much about our kids. And obviously if they're happy, they want, the kids are happy, things are happening. So I just think overall, we've been looking at this picture for a long time, what food, with this. I really think it's the companies that we have to hold accountable, in my opinion.
Does anybody have any to add? Okay. Can I please call for a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting? Motion. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Good night, everyone.